Hello students. Today we will be working on multiplying with multi-digit numbers, and for this particular video I'm going to be using the strategy of partial product. You will notice similarities between this strategy and others and how they connect if you watch them all. In this video I'm going to do a 2-digit by 2-digit number and a 3-digit by a 2-digit number. For my first problem, I'm going to use the problem 42 times 15. Okay? If you, as I stated previously, if you've watched my video on other methods, you will notice that I'm using the same problem so we can have consistency. So the first step that I'm going to take both of my factors and I'm going to write them in expanded form. Expanded form is simply breaking or decomposing the number into its various place values. This particular number has two place values, the tens and the ones. So that number has a 4 in the tens place. 4 tens would be 10, 20, 30, 40. And there's a 2 in the ones place, which remains just the 2. With 15, I have a 1 in my tens place, so that is just 10. And a 5 in my ones place, so that becomes the 5. Now I like to set my problem up side by side so I can see the pairs that I'm going to be making. So I like to put them in parentheses to know that they are one entity or one number. So I have 40 plus 2 times 10 plus 5. And I do apologize. I did just notice I put a multiplication symbol here. This should be an addition symbol. Okay. Now I'm going to create pairings that will allow me to create partial products of my total product. I'm going to take the first number in my first factor, which is 40, and I'm going to multiply it by each of the numbers in my second factor, but I'm going to do this separately. So first I'm going to do 40 times 10, and then I'm going to go back and do 40 times 5. Okay, at this point you can go ahead and start multiplying, but I like to go ahead and get all my pairings done first. Now I'm going to go back to my first factor and I'm going to use the second part of that factor, which is the 2, and I'm going to multiply it as well times both parts of the second factor. So I'm going to do 2 times 10 and 2 times 5. Obviously, I'm not going to multiply these times each other because the initial problem had me multiplying this number times that number. So I don't want to multiply it within the parentheses. Now I'm going to do the multiplication of these four problems. I have 40 times 10, and just a little tip, when dealing with multiplying times powers of 10, if we just multiply our non-zero digits, so in this case 4 times 1, and then we'll take those 2 zeros and add them on the back. This only works when multiplying by powers of 10, meaning numbers that have zeros at the end. We're going to do the same thing here. 4 times 5, which is 20. You may say, okay, I have my 0, I'm done. This 0 is separate from the 0 we're going to add. This is actually part of this product. Now I'm going to add the 0 from 40. 2 times 10, so I'll do 2 times 1, which is 2, and add my 0. And lastly, 2 times 5 equals 10. Each of these numbers, remember, represents one part of the product of this original problem. So since each of these are a part, I'm going to add my parts together to get my full product. These can be added 2 at a time, or if you're able to use grid paper to make sure you have your digits lined up correctly, they can be added all at the same time. Just for the sake of making it simple to see, I'm going to add them 2 at a time on the side. So first I'm going to do 400 plus 200, which is 600. Then I'm going to add that 20, which is 620. And then I'm going to add the 10, the last piece, which is 630. So my total product for 42 times 15 is 630. For my second problem, I'm going to use same strategy, different numbers. So I'm going to complete the problem 123 times 45. First step, I'm going to write these two factors in expanded form just like I did up here. So 123 will now equal to, look at your hundredths place, you have a 1 in the hundredths place, that's 100. You have a 2 in the tens place, so that's 20. And your 3 in the ones place remains the 3. For 45, you have a 4 in the tens place, which is 40. And a 5 in the ones place, which is 5. Again, just for personal preference, I like to set them up side by side before I make my pairings to make it easier to see. And I do place them in parentheses. That reminds me that those pieces create that one factor. Just like in the previous problem, I am now going to create pairings between my first factor, the parts of my first factor, and the parts of my second factor. So I'm going to start with 100. And I'm going to multiply it by 40. I'm going to take that 100 again and multiply it by 5. I will then move to my second part of my first factor, which is 20, and multiply it by 40. And do the same thing with 20 and 5. And lastly, I'll do the same thing with the 3. So 3 times 40, 3 times 5. If you look at the pattern, you will notice in this case, you have your first part twice because you have 2 parts over here. You have the second part used 2 times because you still have those same 2 parts over here. And you use your third part twice because you have the same 2 parts over here. So now I'm going to do the multiplication and then the addition. 100 times 40 means 1 times 4, which is 4, with 3 zeros. 1 times 5 is 5, with 2 zeros. 2 times 4 is 8, with 2 zeros. 2 times 5 is 10. Adding 1 0, again, remember, that first part of the multiplication, there was already a 0, and you still have to add the remaining 0. 3 times 4 equals 12. Add that 0. And lastly, basic fact, 3 times 5 is 15. All of these pieces make up parts of the product of the original problem. Now I'm going to add them together. And like I stated previously, I'd like to do the largest ones first. So we're going to do 4,000 plus 500 which is 4,500. Add 800. Which is 5,300. Add 100. Which is 5,400. Due to running out of space, I'm going to take this 5,400 and move it up here so I can continue adding. Now I'm going to add 120. And last, I'm going to add my last piece, which is the 15. This gives me a product of 5,535. If you have any questions, please reach out to your teacher.